Welcome to There Is a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell. I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I am the owner of Maxwell's fitness programs, and I've been in business since 1994. That is a very long time, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of this podcast is to get to the real deal of what really works, and most importantly, why things work. Let's chase the science. All right, before I get to all that, let me thank Jonathan and Lynn Gilden of the Gilden Group at Realty Pros. Their whole team is committed to providing the highest level of customer service in home sales. Give them a shout. Find out what your home is worth. 386-451-2412. I'm going to discuss some wild statistics today. It's really, really insightful. So let's look at some numbers that were just published by Michael Easter, who's written a couple books that I really, really enjoy. He is basically a scientist of sorts, gets into a lot of the social sciences and covers a lot in health and fitness and a lot of psychological issues as well. Anyway, great author. Here are some latest statistics he's shown that regarding our hunter and gatherer ancestors, they likely walked between 7 and 15 miles per day. They had 14 times more activity level than us. 14 times more. All right. And here's the kicker right here. This one blows me away. 80% of Americans don't get more than 20 minutes of brisk walking per day. 80%. Isn't that crazy? I mean, we don't really need to do that much more research on why we have an obesity problem in this country. The worldwide, but I mean, we lead the way in that, unfortunately. It's not a category you want to be the leader of, but we are. So what really else do we need to discuss? I mean, it's pretty clear that we don't move nearly as much as we're basically designed to do. We are designed biologically, genetically. We are designed to work. We are designed to move. We are not designed as people, as biological bodies, to live the modern day lifestyle that we live. There's nothing more we can do about trying to change the way society is going. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of beautiful, wonderful things that technology is inventing. It's like anything. They're tools that we can use, and how we use them is what matters. So I'm not one of those that thinks that we just need to throw everything back in a box and go back to the way it were. I mean, that would be absolutely ridiculous, right? I mean, just if you look at medical science alone, the scientific wonders that have come out that have saved lives, prolonged the comfortable living that we can now live with today. So there are many great things that have come out of technology, but we have to understand that our bodies, and that's the issue I like to deal with. This is my job. This is what I'm paid to do, that our bodies are not designed to do what they do today. They are designed to move. So there are two problems when you look at this. The first problem is, well, like I said, there's nothing we can do. Modern living has changed. We don't have to even roll down our windows in our car anymore. We don't have to lift up the garage door. We have automatic garage door openers, right? I mean, I can't really remember the last time I saw a garage door that you'd had to manually open outside of the fact when power went out and you had to somehow get that garage door up by unlocking the bolt on it. I believe that happened to me. Well, I do know that happened to me. I'm just trying to think when. It was during one of the hurricanes many, many years ago. I had to find a way to open the garage door and take it off its tracks, so to say. So we live in a different society, and every year we have to do less and less. We were talking at the gym this morning with some clients about like how different it was just riding in our parents' cars. I mean, the kids today would be mortified what we drove around in. I mean, and that's just cars. We look at everything and it's changed. Again, that's a beautiful thing, right? We no longer have to get out the old map and figure out how we're going to drive from here to Pennsylvania or from here to New York or from here to Wyoming, just naming places I go or would like to go to Wyoming actually to visit my sister Mary, would love to get out there. But anyway, we no longer have to do those things, right? We can just simply open up Google Maps, we can plug in the address, and boom, it's right on our phone. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where we had those systems in our car, right? They weren't programmed to our phone yet. They were just the first GPSs that you can put in your car. Remember that? I mean, that wasn't even that long ago. And now those things are obsolete. Heck, just speaking of things like that, most kids today may not know that you can get the old radar detectors out and try to detect when a police officer has the radar out. There's probably still things like that. But that was high-tech stuff when I was in college. And I mean, now it's like silly to even look back and think the stuff that we called high-tech. So the world has changed. I think I have made my point. You probably are thinking of other points that go along with this. It's kind of fun to go back. But the reality is that's not what our body is designed for. It's designed to move. It feels better when we move, which is why when we exercise, we get a dopamine increase, which is why when we exercise, we get endorphins in our bloodstream. All the positive hormones come out when we exercise because it's our body rewarding us for when we're doing what it is supposed to do. That's really what the body does, by the way. It's got its own internal system of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. So if you go out and you get overstressed, you're barely sleeping because you're burning the candle at both ends, and you go to bed super late and you're not eating healthy food, so your body's really, really stressed out, and then maybe you're doing a little bit too much partying or things like that. You get up the next day and you're like, oh man, I feel like crap. Well, there's a reason for that. Your endocrine system, your hormonal system is flooded with some of those negative hormones like cortisol and others, kind of making you feel like crap, right? So there's this negative reinforcement that the body says, man, I don't like you doing that. It's like, well, why? Why, body? Body says, because you're trying to kill me, because that's what the body thinks. And remember, the body's ultimate objective is what? Does everybody remember? Homeostasis. That's what it wants. It wants to keep you alive. So it's going to reinforce all of the positive things that you're doing. For example, procreation, right? Your body says, oh, that's what we're here to do. We have to do this. There's reward centers for all of these things. So exercise is one of those things. This is what we're supposed to do. And it's also quite simple. Let's just go back to what Michael Easter's statistics said. He was talking about how much more activity our hunter-gatherers ancestors had in the form of just steps, walking, covered, things like that. 20 minutes a day, 80% of our population is not doing. I mean, 20 minutes a day compared to 7 to 15 miles. So in 20 minutes, you might get, I don't know. I mean, some people might get 2,000 steps in that. So that's a mile. I mean, some people might get a little more, of course, but we're talking a mile, and most people aren't willing to do that. I'm saying willing because they're not doing it. It's not like people are forced to sit on the couch, so they're not willing to. So it's not complicated. So what's the problem? I'm asking you that. If you're listening to this in your car, or a lot of people tell me they listen to this when they exercise, I want you to think about that. I think a lot of us have ideas. I always say that people try to overcomplicate everything. I mean, I've said before on this podcast, but I'm never going to sit here and assume everybody's listened to every podcast and know everything I've said. That would be quite narcissistic of me. So I have said before that one of the greatest compliments I ever got is that, and this came from a client that I trained, was that I took the more complicated areas and I made it make sense to them. So they were getting blown away. They were more into triathlons and running and stuff like that. So they read a lot of the high-tech stuff on training and they would get really, really confused. And I would look at it with them and I'd say, look, it's really about this. It's really about that. And they thought, oh, wow, that's great. And I like doing that because I consider myself to be a pretty rational thinker. I consider myself to be an objective thinker. And, you don't know how many times that I've sat around and read some of the journal articles that I get and I laugh. I literally laugh out loud and I'm like, nobody gives a shit about this. Like, this isn't helping people whatsoever. I mean, I get it. It's helping somebody get their thesis. It's helping somebody with their dissertation. I get it. But that's really all it does. I mean, we are not going to learn that much more about physical exercise that is going to help us take that next leap in the fitness. We're just not. I mean, we might learn some new things. I'm not arrogant enough to say we're not, but we're not going to learn that much more about nutrition and about physical exercise that is going to help us with the root problem. And the root problem is people are simply not moving enough. The reality is we need to get people to do it. It has to matter. So the overcomplication of things is a problem. That's an area that I can help with. I try to fight. I mean, there are, huge, massively big accounts out there in the social media world, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the bottom line is people that would fall under the category of bro science, and they are so annoying. They really don't have, not the ones I know, they don't have this scientific education to even put science after their name. But they're kind of under that category of bro science. And what they do is they come out with all these hacks of different things people can and should be doing, which could be anywhere from altering their testosterone levels with either doing it with their doctor or otherwise, or doing super hard challenges or cold plunges or all these different types of things that would fall under the category of bro science. But they really make it so stupidly complicated that I shake my head. I mean, the reality is you just gotta move more and eat less if you're trying to lose weight. And if you're not trying to lose weight, you just have to eat more. Yeah, there you go, Rob. Tell them all to eat more. You just have to move more and eat healthy. These comments that come around. I mean, I saw it with this guy and one of the people I follow, the non-bro science, I actually follow the science, and he retweeted a tweet. And by the way, Twitter, oh my goodness, it is just, I say it all the time to people that are close to me. I'm like, why do I get on there? Because I just shake my head and get frustrated. And it is just such a place where that can happen. Anyway, this person retweeted this comment of a guy who talked about going on a trip to Italy for 8 weeks. And he claims he ate more, and he claims he exercised a little bit less, and he claims he lost 2.5 pounds. Now, this guy has a big following. I don't know what he is. He's not a bro science guy. He is just a person that a lot of people seem to know. And he tweeted it, and then, of course, everybody wrote afterwards, oh, that's because of the American food system. And he kind of was alluding to that, and then he said when he came back, within 2.5 months, he gained his weight back, and he claimed he was eating less and moving more, but he still gained the weight. Basically, what he was trying to imply was that the American medical community or The FDA was trying to kill him, basically, that, we over here are being poisoned with all these foods. And look, there is no question that we need to do a better job over here in the United States. And I'm not going to get here on a rant about that, but there's no question that there are foods that are allowed over here that aren't allowed in Europe. Nobody is disputing that. There's no question that there needs to be greater regulation, in my opinion, on food. In most scientific opinion, there needs to be greater restrictions on certain food processing and on certain food dyes and things like that. I'm not going to dispute that. But anybody that's going to sit there and say that they're hopeless, like, oh, I came back and I gained, it wasn't even a lot of weight, like 2.5 pounds, and I was eating less. Oh, there's no way I can be my best weight over here. I mean, that's lame. I mean, that's really, really lame. It's like, okay, so maybe there are more processed foods where you are in the United States than where you were in Italy. Okay, this is true. Maybe your eating habits were slightly better over there, but you can't tell me that you can't take that knowledge, which you seem like you knew enough, to come back and eat healthfully. But that wasn't his point, right? He had an agenda. Everybody has an agenda on social media nowadays, and it's really not helping anybody. Like, getting people to hate scientists is ridiculous. All right? It's really, really ridiculous. The bottom line is, and I'll repeat it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to unlock your full potential? I want to introduce you to the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, a powerful resource to transform your life today. With expert interviews, practical tips, and inspiring stories, this podcast is your roadmap to lasting wellness. Here's what a listener has to say.
I used to struggle with my health, but this podcast changed everything. It's like having a personal trainer, nutritionist, and life coach totally for free.
With over 2,000 five-star reviews, we're a podcast you can trust. The Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
I've been out of college now for 30 odd years, and with my master's and all that. There is not any more information that we know now about nutrition and exercise than we knew then. The only difference would be in organics and things like that, because that just was not really a thing back then. It wasn't talked about as much. But that's not really as far as the science that goes into weight loss and stuff like that. So there have been some studies on planting and things like that. On exercise, the only thing that's relatively new is more focus on the brain. In other words, the brain's perception of fatigue versus actual fatigue. But that's it. Like, we know how muscles grow. We know how fat cells shrink. We know how we get stronger. We know how the heart can go through ventricular hypertrophy and increase the cardiac output and stroke volume. Like, we've known these things. We know these things. And it all comes down to consistent exercise. So we know what you need to do, and it's really, really not that complicated. If we need to lose weight, I will repeat, you need to move more and eat less. If you need to get stronger, you need to go to the gym 2 to 3 times a week. We know that. There are many good plans out there. There doesn't have to be a perfect way that you strength train, but you do need to go 2 to 3 times a week if you want to get stronger. I used to teach my students all the time, know what not to do. Never proclaim that you have the magic way to lift weights, the perfect plan to lift weights. I'm finishing my 3rd book now, and I'm making that very clear. This is a program that I have used for strength training. There are many others. There are many great other programs, of course. This is the one that I've successfully used with people to work out 2 to 3 times a week consistently. I talked on this podcast a couple episodes ago about 2 long-term clients that I've had over the years. Gina Millar with her husband, Gordon, who was a client for many, many years as well. Just not quite as long as Gina because He died about 4 years earlier. And then Jerry Johnson, both of them clients for about 25 years. Programs that I've used for them to consistently come to the gym, ironically, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, both of them, 3 times a week, many, many, many years, doing what we could do when they got there, know what not to do, following a program that absolutely works. Maybe Jerry was dealing with some swelling in his knee that day. Okay, we know not to go heavy leg presses that day, right? In other words, we know what not to do. There's not a perfect program. We don't have to listen to influencers and bro science and all these basic charlatans out there that are trying to sell you a load of crap. It doesn't have to be complicated. You just have to do it. And then the second thing is your cardio. We just have to move. There's not a perfect zone. Everybody's like, oh, zone 2 training, zone 2 training. It's all over the internet now. Zone 2, zone 2. Zone 2 has replaced the HIIT training of 5 years ago, where everybody said, if you don't do HIIT, HIIT, high intensity interval training, then you are not maximizing your cardio. And I'm shaking my head going, not everybody can do that. It's like you find the type of cardio that works for you and you do it. And you do it consistently. I always tell people to try to get in 5 days a week of cardio. Try to get in 5 days a week of 30 minutes. Like that is your goal. You want to do more? Do a little more, but at least do that. Hell, if you do that, you're doing great, because remember, 80% of Americans don't even do 20 minutes, right? So that's pretty darn bad. And then the final thing is eat sensibly. Eat sensibly. Like I said, of course we can do a better job with regulations, but guess what? That's above your pay grade. That's above my pay grade. Like, there's nothing I can do. We can write letters. We can do these things. Great. But there's nothing we can do except make the best choices we can make. When did we become such a nation of blamers? You know, it's the government's fault I'm fat. No, it's not. It is your fault you're fat if you call yourself fat. It's your fault that things happen, right, that are in your control and you choose not to do them. And I'm not trying to fat shame or any of those things. I'm really just trying to make a point. It's not any organization's fault. We can all go to Publix or Target or Aldi's or Winn-Dixie, wherever you shop, and go in there and make the best choices. I mean, it doesn't take Einstein to figure out that if you go to the produce department and you pick up a nice looking sweet potato, that it is probably a hell of a lot less modified than those gluten-free pretzels on aisle 17, right? I mean, it doesn't take Einstein to help you shop, right? I mean, anything with a label and with a gazillion ingredients on the side is going to have more shit in it that you probably shouldn't be consuming. And there's nothing the FDA can do much about that if you're going to continue to pick up highly processed bags or boxes of food. But we want to blame other people, other things, and organizations for our own choices. If you know me, you know that's always been one of the things I talk about in every walk of life. Like, rarely are there victims. Rarely are there accidents. And when I talk about victims, I talk about in situations where people have had the ability to choose. That's what I mean by that. Rarely do we have situations where people absolutely choose the absolute best right thing to do and they still gain weight and struggle with their fitness. I'm just keeping it in that arena right now because that's the arena I know something about and that's the arena I get paid for. So you're listening to this. I want you to think about, what do we need to do? Mostly, what do you need to do, right? Because we can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. But you do have somewhat control over your circle of friends, right? If you have somebody that constantly complains that, America just wants them to be fat. I mean, come on, how ludicrous is that? There are people that believe that, by the way, or throw in other countries. I mean, look, everything comes down to your choice with it. How do we convince people to do the walking, to do the weightlifting, to eat healthy? Get the D word out of your vocabulary. Diet, eat healthy. Change your eating habits. Like, how do we get people to take responsibility for themselves in this area? I promise you, the clients that I've had the most success with absolutely do that. Sure, I'm there as a tool. I'm there to help. Or Ellen, anybody else that's ever worked at Maxwell's is there as a tool to help and to guide. But they've got to do the work. If they show up to their appointment 2 to 3 times a week, that's a win. They did their part, we did ours. I mean, that's a great thing. And the ones who have had success, when we say to them, did you do your cardio yesterday? They say, of course, I went for my walk. I always do. I love it. Great. They're doing it. And they're also the ones that try their best to make the best food choices. The eating part is hard. I get it. We're not always going to eat perfect all the time, and there is no such thing as eating perfect. But we can always choose to do our best at the moment. That is always my rule of thumb. Like, I'm not an extremist where if I go to a venue and they don't have certain foods that I eat, I'm not going to starve myself. I'm not going to not eat. I'm sorry, that's stupid. I mean, who wants to live that way? But I am going to make the best choice available. I'm going to look around. I might walk around the stadium a few times to see what kind of food trucks, to see what they got. And sometimes it's just, man, there are not very many great choices. But you know what there is? There's the best choice of the non-great choices. And I just think if we went through life doing that all of the time, maybe your friend takes you to Panera and you go, okay, I'm going to make the best choice. Maybe, God forbid, close your ears, maybe they take you to McDonald's. Oh my God, you're going to not eat? I don't know. I mean, I guess if you don't have to eat, you don't. But can't you even make the best choice there? I mean, look, I'm not publicizing trying to get people to go to fast foods. My point is, no matter where you end up, you can make your best choices. And I 100% believe that if everybody made the best choice they could, all of the situations they get in, they're going to be really, really well off. They're going to be good. They're going to be golden, And Jerry, back to my old clients who just passed, Jerry and Gina and Gordon, you know what? That's what they did. They made the best choices they could day in and day out. Never perfect. Neither am I. They made the best choices they could, and it seemed to work pretty damn good. All right. So let's think about that today. All right, now let's think about getting a new garage door. Does your door make a ton of noise when you open it? It sounds like you're waking up the entire neighborhood. Okay, that's my garage door. It really is. And that's why Zach Hawk came over to help me with it. And that's what Overhead Door of Daytona Beach does. They're the premier garage door company in the Daytona Beach area. Give them a shout at overheaddordaytona.com.